one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Any of you who are out there wish to speak to the commission but are not addressing any of the agenda items, now would be the time for you to turn in a card from the back so you can speak. Okay. It's time for the yearly appointment of officers. So we will need a chair and a vice chair. Anyone who wishes to do that?
Chair.
A second.
All in favor? Unanimous. We need a vice chair next.
Yep.
Do I have a motion?
I nominate Ralph Arnett for a vice chair.
I'll second.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor? Thank you. Okay, approval of the minutes. Are there any issues that you found that need to be brought up on these minutes?
I didn't find anything though.
Okay, do I have a motion?
I motion to be able to the minute that is.
Second.
All in favor? Unanimous. We will be conducting a public hearing to consider an ordinance amending the Town of Bartonville Code of Ordinances, Chapter 14, Exhibit A, Article 14.02, Ordinance 361-05, zoning regulations for the Town of Bartonville to change the zoning designation on 4 tracts of land totaling 101.467 acres situated on the Daniel Cook Survey, abstract number 230, and A.M. Felton's Survey, abstract number 1594 in the town of Bartonville, Denton County, Texas, from agricultural, ag, to residential estates 5, which is RE5. Town file number ZC2023-005. We'll open the public hearing at 7:03.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have tonight here Ryan Wells. He is the planning consultant that I've been using. He's the reason we make sure all of our notices go out to the right people. The town administrator job is a little taxing at times, and he makes sure I don't miss any deadlines. He's also the reason we have the details in those staff memos. Again, those are public documents, and that's really valuable information to have in there as opposed to just, my little 1-sentence summaries I used to do. So I'm going to turn it over to Ryan to do the presentation on this, and I'm here for any questions as well.
All right, thank you, Thad. Again, my name is Ryan Wells, and I'm the consulting planner for the town of Bartonville. I started this gig with you guys in December of last year, and it's been a great pleasure to work with Thad and the Bartonville team on the projects that have come before you over the last 10, 11 months. My group is called Ad Interim Consulting, and I specialize in supporting small cities in planning work. So again, it's my great honor to be here tonight. I'll be giving the staff presentation on this project. We're titling the Knights Landing West zoning change. The city file number is ZC 2023-005. So this project is intended to requesting a zoning change from agriculture to residential estates 5 or RE5. The current zoning is agriculture. And this is to permit the subdivision of the property into greater than or equal to 5-acre lots. The stated intent in the application for this zoning change is to rezone to be in compliance with the future land use plan. So we'll talk about that compliance here in a moment. The image on the right, of course, is taken directly from the application packet submitted by the applicant that shows the general area to be subject to the zoning change request. So the property itself is located on 101.467 acres. However, it actually affects all or portion of 4 parcels, which is a larger area of 178.763 acres. So 3 of the 4 parcels are wholly affected by this zoning request. And 1, there's just a little sliver kind of where that interior curve is that will be included in this zoning request. The property is located on the north side of East Jeter Road, approximately 2,185 feet east of the intersection of East Jeter Road and Country Court. And, you know, the property in general, given its location, would take its primary access off of East Jeter Road, and there would potentially be secondary access potential from Hat Creek Court on the northeast side of the property. So when looking at a zoning change request, there are 5 criteria in the Bartonville zoning ordinance that staff are directed to evaluate to bring their recommendation before you tonight. Those are listed here, and we're going to look at each of those individually in this presentation. So the first criterion is whether the proposed zoning change is consistent with the comprehensive plan and other adopted plans. Reviewing the comprehensive plan, which is shown there on the left on this slide, the land use designation for all of the properties subject to the zoning change request is RE5. And as you know, the comprehensive plan land use designations are very compatible with the zoning designations, the naming thereof, and the standards therein. The purpose of this land use designation of RE5 is to provide for residential and related uses with some limited agricultural uses pertaining to the keeping of animals and livestock for personal use and enjoyment. So given that the land use designation is RE5, and in the comprehensive plan, the RE5 zoning district is a compatible zoning district for that RE5 land use district, staff found that this first criterion is met with the proposal. The next criterion is whether the proposal is consistent with any annexation or development agreement. This is an applicant or property owner initiated zoning change request, so there's no agreement that triggered or spurred this application tonight. The third criterion is whether the permitted uses in this new zoning district are compatible with the immediate area. And this is most likely what you as the Planning and Zoning Commission are looking at, determining what the compatibility of the proposed use in this zoning change would be when related to the surrounding uses. So again, the image on the right gives a kind of character and compatibility assessment, looking at the Hat Creek development to the north, some small and large lots to the west and the south. And so the surrounding uses and the surrounding zoning designations in those uses are agriculture, RE5, which again is the zoning being requested tonight, and RE2, which is the residential estates with 2-acre minimum lot sizes. So the RE5 zoning designation would provide for relatively consistent large lot residential uses compatible with those surrounding uses, which have parcels ranging from 1 to 13 acres immediately surrounding the subject property. The fourth criterion is that was whether the proposal is presented in accord with existing or proposed plans for schools, streets, or utilities in the area. East Jeter Road is a collector road in the master thoroughfare plan, but there are no other school, street, or utility plans that would be affected or necessarily supported by this zoning change. There would have to be utility extensions to provide necessary utilities for any development within the zoning change area. Otherwise, it's not really applicable to any other plans. And finally, this is kind of a more generalized statement, whether there are any other factors affecting public health, safety, morals, or general welfare that should be considered in your recommendation to the town council. Staff have found that there are no applicable factors with this type of development that we could identify that would be of concern. So given those considerations, the staff recommendation to the Planning and Zoning Commission is for approval without any conditions of approval. And we present this to you tonight and are available for any questions that you may have. Thank you.
one card up here to speak, and that is Laura Pittman. Will you please come up? Will you please come up? Thank you.
At 1237 Post Oak Course, I think this just kind of tips the edge of my property. I love that it's RE5. I think that does fit in, and I do know that all that's going to be developed at some point. The only thing I'd ask is that we try to keep, I mean, that's a lovely piece of property. We try to keep as many trees as we can, hopefully. And we know you don't try to go down my street and make that a through street, because that would be no bueno. So, as long as you're going through Hat Creek or down Jeter, that's great. But so that's all I had. Thank you.
Sorry, we didn't catch the address. I apologize. You're
1237
Post Oak. Okay. That's what I thought you said. Thank you.
Did anyone else want to speak that didn't get an appearance card filled out?
So the applicant is here. If y'all have any questions, they have a team. If y'all have any questions of the applicant, they are present.
Is there anything that you would like to ask the applicant? We do have someone new tonight, so you may have questions. Okay. Okay. Then we will close the public hearing at 7:12. And discussion. Or a motion. There, as you know, there's nothing in this request that is against our land use plan. The request has, it has no variation from that. It meets the requirements of RE5 to rezone it to that. So that's exactly what's on that map up there. So I would entertain a motion if somebody's ready to do that. All right,
Say, I'm happy to see RE5.
good.
I make a motion that we accept this change. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Item number 2, conduct a public hearing and consider an ordinance amending the Town of Bartonville Code of Ordinances, Chapter 14, Exhibit A, the zoning ordinance, by deleting Chapter 20, fencing, walls, and screening requirements, and by amending Chapter 3, building regulations, by adding Article 3.10, fences and walls, amending other zoning ordinance and town code provisions accordingly. Staff?
Madam Chair, this will be a team effort since some of these were Ed's, some of the information was provided by Ryan, some was us in DRC. So Ed, do you want to lead us off on the discussion on moving the ordinance and then what you've written?
Okay, from previous discussions, and working with town staff, I made some significant changes, and then there are a lot of provisions here that are really just cleanup. But basically, based upon you may recall my previous comments about House Bill 929 and how that was a recent statute that the legislature enacted that changed the landscape regarding uses and what could be dealt with when you change a zoning ordinance to talk about non-conforming uses. And it was my thought that even though fences are structures and they're not quote unquote uses, I wanted to make it clear that they're not uses by removing the fence provisions that we have in the zoning ordinance and putting them into the town code provisions separately, so that they're just town code provisions, just like any other town code, and it doesn't come with the zoning baggage, if you will, because to make any changes to the zoning ordinance requires a lot more work in cost, and most cities that we represent have their fence regulations in the code of ordinances, not in the zoning ordinance. Not all of them. And so there's it's kind of like signs. Some cities like to have sign provisions in the zoning ordinance and some like to have them in code of ordinances. And so I thought it was a good idea to take fencing out of the zoning ordinance so that we don't trip the wire on House Bill 929 and someone be able to argue, you've made changes to the zoning ordinance regarding my fence, and that's a change in my use of my fence, and therefore you're going to have to pay me. I didn't want to get into that and trip that wire. So I made it cleaner to avoid all that. So I looked in the town code, and it just seemed logical that the building requirements, the building regulations were the best place to put fencing in the fence regs. And so basically I created a new chapter or a new Article 3.10 and plugged in some of what Article or old Chapter 20's provisions said, but I also added things that we talked about, such as some definitions, permit requirements. I think that was a big one that y'all wanted, to have a requirement to, whenever you're going to build a fence, get a permit. And so what kind of fence materials were allowed or disallowed. The decorative fence provisions that were in the zoning ordinance, Chapter 18, were also moved down into 310. Non-conforming fences are addressed. Added a variance procedure in case someone wanted to build a fence that didn't comply with Article 3.10, then they need to go to the Board of Adjustment and get that process going. So it takes it out of, so the fence provisions are really going to be staff oriented and building Board of Adjustment oriented, so that y'all don't have, you and the town council don't have to deal with fences. You wanted to have a provision that said no privacy fences, it's in there. You wanted to have a provision regarding what kinds of materials are allowed, what's not allowed, that's in there. So I hope that it's in the packet and that you've had an opportunity to look at those things. And then there were some provisions that were recommended by Thad and by Ryan. And so those are incorporated in there for clarity. And I hope it reads well. And so basically it is presented in Article 3.10 for y'all to look at, cuss at, whatever. I think the thing that is was tedious was then going back and looking in the zoning ordinance and the other town code provision and finding wherever the word fence or wall was used, and then clear up the references to it, so that in the zoning ordinance now, instead of referencing old Chapter 20, the zoning places that talk about fence regulations is now referencing Article 3.10. And so that's what the long list on the second part of the ordinance does, is clean that up. There's a fee provision that I clarified, and so we got that fixed. And so that when you apply for a permit for a fence, you have to pay a fee, just like any other kind of permit fee. And so we've got that cleared up too. So I hope it addressed everything y'all wanted to, or at least gets us closer, and we can talk about what things you don't have. Thad's grabbing the mic.
I'm grabbing. The one provision that, and Ed did a good job of it in here, and working with Ryan as well. We talk about no privacy fences, but we removed landscaping completely from the fence ordinance. So,
Noticed that.
again,
Yeah.
you may use whatever you want that's a living screen if you want that for your privacy. Go ahead, Ed.
To me, calling landscaping a living fence adds a whole lot of complexity and confusion to everything. It's landscaping. Fencing are structures. I think that makes things a lot cleaner to deal with. At least that's my recommendation.
None of us ever considered,
Taking that out before, because.
yeah. I don't remember. It was a town administrator that insisted that it, or somebody that it,
And her experience in Justin was they had done that a living screen was somehow placed in the fence ordinance. And then there was a lot of debate over that. So I recall that when I first got here.
we didn't really agree with
So
that.
much complexity that it's hard to get your head around. And y'all's discussions about it last year, I think, underscored the reality that we don't want to cross that line. We don't want to make that part of it. So that's what we.
If you have a fence with 50% opacity, I can't even say that word tonight, and landscaping, then you can certainly create that screen you're looking for around your pool, and it will have a very natural open look as well. So those were the provisions that we discussed, and that's what we brought forward.
I thought you did a really good
I
job
do,
on
too.
it.
I was reading all the detail. Who wrote this, Bailey? Really? Oh, okay. Yeah.
We give the ingredients, he makes it legal.
Uh-huh. Because I mean, I thought, my first thought was,
Didn't you have,
No,
we had no
we
fencing
didn't have
permit
a fence
before?
permit.
I was almost positive we had to get a permit when we put our fence up.
Somebody pocketed that one.
Maybe
I was kidding.
somebody told you you did, but I have a question. How do you determine what you charge for a permit? Is
Oh,
there,
that is no small question.
oops,
The law requires that a permit fee of any kind not be so high as to count as or act like or smell like an unlawful tax. A permit fee or a building permit fee or any kind of a fee is supposed to be to help defray and pay for administrative costs. And so unfortunately, you can't make them any bigger than that. I've
I
had,
was gonna have you make it littler.
well, that's something you can do, but the hard part is making it too high. And so, because then it looks like an unlawful tax. In there's cases out there that I can tell you a long story about the city of Dallas tried to do that on a fire inspection fee thing that was based on square footage, and they lost. They only had it in place for about a year. They collected about $1.5 million, dropped it, and then the people who had to pay part of that $1.5 million sued and got all their money back with interest. So, because the courts found it to be an unlawful tax. So you don't want to trip that wire. But if you want to make it smaller, that's something we can talk about.
Well, I think it would just depend on what it costs us. What it costs us,
Staff
not only time
process.
for the staff dealing with it, but if there's a permit, I'm assuming that means that somebody has to go out there and say, okay, it's okay.
Yes.
The costs just keep going up. So if we
Yeah.
go lower and then we need to raise it later, that's a pain. I'd rather just leave it and hope it
I've seen fence
goes along
permits
for a while.
range from $50 to $150. So what we have is kind of in the middle to cover all the circumstances.
I think it's reasonable.
I just didn't want anybody screaming about, I have to fix my fence and I have to pay you $75 to do it.
They'll scream anyway. They will scream anyway.
Well, when I have to do mine, I'll scream, how come you didn't make it 50? Any comments or questions?
I have a question. So I'm the new guy, so I get a few questions.
You betcha.
Okay, so Ed, I was looking at this list and it was a lot more detailed than I was expecting. So this is all new. The description of the fencing
Yes.
in here, right?
I mean, in fairness, I took what we had on the books, but there were some things that we didn't have on the books. And so based on research and discussions that we had, that's where like the definitions came from. So there were some defined and some not. So we had previous discussions, Rick.
Okay.
While you were on Board of Adjustment, this body was thinking, talking, all that stuff. So a lot of that came from my notes.
So some of the things that I saw through B of A, like that hideous corrugated metal fence that I saw that somebody put up recently, that wouldn't make it through these types of restrictions.
Not if they wanted to put it up in the future.
Okay.
This
that's-
doesn't go back and make them take it down. You can't do that.
Right, yeah, right, I understand. So the stuff that's existing would be grandfathered.
And that's part of why the the commissioners here wanted to have a permit process. So that things like that wouldn't get put up without the town's knowledge.
So there was another fence I saw, it was a 6-foot pole fence, but then the owners decided they put a black canvas cloth all around it, so it effectively made it you couldn't see through it. Would that pass through this? It wouldn't, okay. Yeah. All right, that's-
And the basis for all of what we requested with tweaking and all that was to try to keep it country, not suburbs. And if it's going to be country, you got to be able to see through an awful lot of it, which is what the people here ask for. Any more questions? Then oops. Oh, I'll close the public hearing at 7.
Opened it.
Oh, I opened the public hearing at 7:26. And I will close the public hearing at 7:26. Since there's nobody here to talk about it, I thought maybe.
The only question I had was, we did a lot of talking about, making sure that there isn't solid fences along major streets, but you can't have a solid fence anywhere now? Is that that's what I'm reading?
What about,
Even in a backyard that faces another backyard, no solid fencing at all now?
That's
Right.
correct. Unless you have a lot that's less than 2 acres. That's the one exception.
One exception is, yes, less than 2 acres.
What's the exception, sir?
If the lot was less than 2 acres.
Uh-huh.
if you have a pool?
Agreed. It doesn't allow for that kind of a fencing. You can landscape. I think that's what everybody was talking about, is doing landscaping.
Well, I felt like
to-
we talked about the not having any,
That's how it started,
right, was because of the major roads.
right?
Um,
That was the beginning of the whole, we gotta
or in
address.
the front of a home
Yeah.
or whatever. I don't know if I agree with you can't have any privacy at all. In the back of your home if your house is close to another back of someone's house. I don't know.
There is a provision that says that if you want to vary from those requirements, you can go to the Board of Adjustment.
Adjustments, right?
And so there's the out. There's the process that allows some specific conditions.
There are situations where I would sure want to be able to, depending on the neighborhood and where the houses are situated, where I don't want, that I might want to put something else up besides.
A
Yeah, but
tree.
what you just described is exactly what Board of Adjustments criteria do. They look at the specifics of a site. And so,
Is there some way that we can say to Board of Adjustments that we expect that there's going to be situations that,
well, we have criteria already in here. In the Board of Adjustment section, we have PIN 007, there are
Page 31 in your packet.
some criteria. Looks like typo, I missed, there's an added E there, but there's no E. I had numbers and I guess, Jan, you made them into letters. But anyway, those 4 criteria in section 3.10.007 are the criteria that the board can use to address the specifics like you're talking about. Won't adversely impact adjacent property. It's unique design and configuration or serves a unique function. Number 3, it's needed due to restricted area, shape, topography, physical features, or conditions that are unique to the property. And then the last one is variance will substantially improve the health, safety, and welfare. So those are the kinds of things that a Board of Adjustment looks at anyway. And so it's property specific.
I have 4 of the neighbors that join me that have swimming pools.
Mhm.
I think one of them has a privacy fence and the others don't,
Mhm.
but those are not situated where they bother me at all. one of them has a privacy fence from between the other two neighbors, the other
Yeah.
neighbor.
Yeah.
I just want to be able that there's some avenue that's open to them.
This is a.
Okay.
So Brenda, to your point. My neighbor, we have 2.5 acre lots, so it wouldn't be under 2. Last year, he had a pool put in and my garage and where we play basketball and where we work on our cars directly faces where his pool was. And his wife was real uncomfortable taking him and their little, being out there with the little kids where everybody, it's just a real clear view. So he came over to me and said, hey, would you mind if I put up as a privacy fence? I said, no, go, you know, it makes sense. So but that wouldn't have made it through without going to BOA
That's right.
this time.
Right. And
Once-
I mean, pools are a big thing. I mean, I think you can see into our pool area from our, what I think of is our property, we have big, pretty decent size. We have 4.7 acres. But our house is on the very back.
Yeah, see, that's the way ours
So
works.
the
It just
very back.
happened to be.
And so our pool is also right back there, and our neighbor behind has lots of horses and people riding and whatever, and it's not necessarily always just our pool area, but it's no privacy. Now, before we bought the house, there's already a partial privacy fence that would never get approved now because it is 12 foot tall. Across the big back section, because at one point that was a huge junkyard back there. And we didn't put it in. We bought the house, it was as is, and our neighbor now has cleared that up and all, but I love it because we have chickens. And 12 feet mean we don't get the coyotes and the bobcats really in that little area of our property. And they have lots of lights and people and just whatever, just right there. So I don't know. I'm just thinking if someone else's house was right against a barn, I don't know, like ours is.
I think we have to assume that Board of Adjustments is going to do their job correctly. And
That and the other thing is this town has so many different properties and so many different builders. We can't do anything to figure out every single property. You have to look at it as a
Agreed, I
whole.
agree, but
And I don't know how you alter this the way Ed wrote it without taking it clear out.
We had looked at, regulations that would allow it, say, behind a property line. But again, because of the variations between builders, lot shapes and everything else, we ended up on something like this that Ed has proposed. They gave a path forward, but again, the discussion of 6-foot privacy fences, even behind that build line, didn't provide the look, the feel that Bartonville currently
that's what Board of
has.
Adjustments is for,
Right.
is to take care of this.
So yeah, we DRC talked around a lot of that as well. So yeah, that was a long meeting.
About 4 of them.
Uh-huh.
Actually, we kicked that around and looked at it from every angle and tried to figure out what to do. And putting it just on streets when so many people don't even face streets, they're back someplace where they're affected by something, but it didn't meet the ordinance the way we were trying to do it the other way. There just wasn't a way to round it.
Not kidding. This thing's been on my whiteboard for so long, I don't think it'll erase anymore.
And I love it being open here and I get it, but part of it being open in here is you want privacy too. It's just, I don't know.
So what do you want to do?
I don't know if there's an answer.
Or are you proposing something?
I don't know if there's
I don't
really an
think we can-
answer. Yeah,
We can't cover the
and-
situation. That's what a Board of
yeah,
Adjustments is
you
for.
can't, and
Is there any way you can distinguish between peripheral and internal? I mean, the pool, I could see you putting a fence around something like this, but around your entire property is a different issue.
Not easily. We talked about it
You know, like something 20 feet or less.
We can't cover every situation.
That's,
I understand that, but
that's why this took a little bit of time to get to. Was to kind of play with these different options. And then when you start listing exceptions to the rule, then they sort of swallow the rule. And so I think that it's y'all's call, but we also kind of, we're wanting to keep staff in a management sort of way to address the situations by having a process with the Board of Adjustment. And so that is there to address the specifics that people need, like Rick just described on his, you know, as a particular configuration and alignment of structures and pools and basketball and all that. So, you know, those kind of specifics, I think a Board of Adjustment can listen to and make a
Well, they can
decision.
say,
no guarantee if we're trying, if this is what we want is open space and whatever, they're honestly, if they have the Bartonville thought, 90% of these are going to be denied. That's just my opinion. I don't know. They're going to understand you want privacy, this, that, and the other. I know you served on Board of Adjustments, but
It depends on.
if it's like, we want open space, we don't want these fences. If we wanted these fences, they'd be in our ordinances. I think that's a big risk. Maybe they approve it, maybe they don't.
There is.
It's a
there's
big
if
if.
there.
It's a
It really
big
is.
if. That's right. I don't have an answer though. I caused a problem that I don't have an answer for.
I think
I don't
if-
think we can come up with an answer that covers everything. I think we have to assume the Board of Adjustments is going to do their job correctly.
When it goes to Board of Adjustments, every property around it is notified. So that's another piece of it.
Yeah, if your neighbor doesn't want it, Board of Adjustment's gonna seriously listen to that, and they're like, well, we don't wanna look at a fence, we'd rather look at their pool.
Or shrubbery.
Well, you're not stopping anybody from putting shrubs all over
True.
either.
That's true.
So
And
there
we keep
is an
having
alternative.
something like this, we're never gonna have shrubs, we can't keep our trees alive. I mean, we probably lost, I don't know, I bet we've lost more than 10 trees on our property from this past summer, so.
the Board of Adjustment also has the ability to negotiate those things of, you're proposing a fence here, your pool is here. With that input, we will approve this. We're not going to approve this. So again, they have that latitude to tailor those situations.
I think we have to leave it to the Board of Adjustments to do their job correctly.
I think it's better to do that than to take it out completely. So there's not really anything in between.
I have to probably agree there.
I think Brenda's right. And I think with the new building that's coming in, we're probably going to have more challenging comments about it because people that have been here for a while, they've already got what they want. But the new ones coming in, I mean, there's some really nice properties with big homes. And yeah, I hear the landscape, but she's also right about how dry it was this last time. We've lost so much of ours. I don't know what a good answer is, but I think we may have just offloaded a workload on Board of Adjustments. And when it goes to them, it's final. So
With this being pulled out of the ordinance, when somebody with new people coming and new properties being developed, will they be aware or made aware, or can we make sure they're made aware before they put in a pool where they decide to put it because of
Applications, permit applications, and we can make sure that's noted on there because
I think
they have
that is an
fence.
absolute
Yeah.
must.
Yeah.
Because it could make a difference in where
Yeah,
somebody
sure.
decides to put their pool.
by state regulations, Some people on large properties have signed agreements that, to hold harmless the town because they weren't going to put a fence around their pool, but state regulations require one. But again, that can be wrought iron.
That's what we have.
That's what I had on around mine. So again, there are provisions for that.
Yeah.
The swimming pool code
Yes.
covers a lot of those details.
So what do we have to do to put in so that if somebody's getting ready to build a pool or they build a house or whatever, that they know it even exists, that they might want to adjust something one way or the other?
That's just up to staff getting that information in our forms.
Okay.
Trust me, I want
We're
to
gonna
do
have
that because otherwise it
tattooed
just
on your
creates headaches
forehead.
for me. If I don't give that information, that just creates headaches for us. So we would make sure that they are aware of the fence ordinance.
Okay. Is there anything else we can do to maybe,
I just think it was interesting that nobody came to complain, frankly. I expected there to be people here to complain about this. Either they didn't take the time to read it all, right?
well,
Like you said, it's going to be the people moving in, not the people.
I think it may be as well. And as long as we're ready for that, I mean, I hear all the answers and there are no really good ones for everything, but I suspect
than
we'll
the-
have some.
tattoo that we're going to put on your forehead.
But I mean, to be honest, if I wouldn't have read this today.
Yep.
I would have put up a privacy fence without even thinking about it. Cause I wouldn't have, I just would have done it.
I think it's got to really be publicized. I
Yeah,
would agree.
y'all
with
can put it on the webpage.
Yeah, we'll put it on the website. We'll put it in the mayor's monthly article. There's a lot of ways to push it out.
It's a good idea.
If it's,
Make sure you say that you took it out of anything to do with P and Z, please.
Oh, my God, man.
All right, so are you ready to make a motion?
I will make a motion if I can see if I can read this correctly. I pretty much read it here. I think that I'll make a motion to recommend to council to an ordinance to amend the code of ordinances, exhibit A zoning ordinance, delete chapter 20 and amending chapter 3 of building regulations, adding article 310 fences and walls, and amending other zoning ordinance and town code provisions accordingly.
A second? All in favor? Wait, 4-1.
Okay.
Not raising my hand anymore. I've been raising my hand.
That's all right. I just wanted to know we agree with. We
I
don't
know,
care.
that's what I was doing.
Those opposed? Okay. Next month, do we have anything hanging over our heads?
not sure yet. It is possible we will have the submitted application for the school again. Yes, so they're in process. They didn't understand how the date, the submittal dates. Now they understand, so it is quite possible you'll see that one next month. I think I've said that 6 times in the last 7 months, though, so we'll see.
Well, other than that, I guess we're finished, other than to say happy Thanksgiving for everybody, because it will have come and gone by the next time we see each other.
Go Rangers.
That's right. Let's
And go Rangers. And, oh,
I know we talked about Airbnbs and rentals. Do we know, I mean, I know that. What's this last one? Shaw property that was for sale and is no longer for sale is now a Airbnb rental. It's called Noah's Ark. Rescue Ranch. And it's now
Where's it at?
it is straight down Jeter. It's that property that was for sale. It was like 20 some acres. Noah Shaw.
which part of Jeter?
Before the
Just
curve.
up the road a little bit.
Yeah, it's right up the road. It's got that crazy weird fence that's
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
metal,
The big property
different
there on the
color.
left with the funky sign.
Lorani.
That was for sale
used to-
for like 10 million.
Yeah, it was, and they
Yeah.
dropped it to 8 and now he's doing I mean, it's online.
Is that West Jeter or East?
East. It's before my property. It's before Green Oaks.
It's right after you go.
On the
up hill,
opposite
to
side.
Left there.
Oh, where the
Yes.
lots of animals used to
And it
be.
is online to do rentals. Short term,
Thank you.
short term. I don't know.
So
I
is
just
there a
wanna make sure
group-
the town is aware of it.
Is there a group that's working on that right now?
We decided we were gonna ignore it, I think.
I mean, I
Yeah.
tell you what, I do real estate residential, not here, down in Central Texas, and I have a bunch of friends, and the big new thing is pad splitting is what they call it. And you buy nicer homes, and then you can rent out to 5 or 6 different people, and that's becoming an issue in some
At the
parts of
same
Texas.
time,
Yes, it's like a boarding, it's almost like a board, you buy a nice house that has a lot of bedrooms. People will pay, they can, owner can rent out and it's to 4 or 5 people and you can charge, make 4 times what you could rent it for if you were just renting a house. It's kind of a new strategy that landlords are starting to do now because of the openness of the internet. You can find, so that would be something I was just wondering about. You wouldn't want something like that to happen here.
we need to
It's
put this
easy
on
to
a
do.
future agenda, Ed. Because this,
Created a multifamily
That's
property,
multifamily,
and
yeah.
therefore it's not allowed.
If that's what it is,
So
that's
just-
what I was wondering. I never thought about it from a
Yeah.
planning and zoning, but it's a pretty new big deal. And I know a lot of my friends, they're not looking at P and Z, they're P and Z in the communities.
That's prohibited here. So
If we find out about it.
that's true.
I'm going to close the meeting at 7:47.